Is it hard to be a minimalist while running a business? Because there's so many factors outside of your control. It's hard to have a minimal, simple business these days.
Yeah. Oh man, what is a minimalist? I mean, when we think about you asked the definition earlier. I mean, it's a philosophy to live intentionally. So let's just call it, let's call it intentionalism. Maybe minimalism is too jarring of a word. So can you live an intentional life while being a business owner? Absolutely, 100%. In fact, I would posit that it helps you be a better business owner because we have only so many resources. And what minimalism does is it helps us be deliberate with those resources. And money is a very important resource, and I don't want to undermine it. It's something that we need in this world. And a lot of people who are impoverished, like I don't want to undermine their poverty. Like that's a big deal. But then we have these other resources: our time, our attention, our creativity. There are all these other resources that we have that if we're not intentional with, well, you'll end up like a jerk like me when I was in the corporate world and I was just trying to cover up all of my misery. But it's that misery was stemming from not having this intentional viewpoint with those resources. I was just giving them up all willy-nilly. And the word success, here's the thing. Success is, for me, success is more about like, how am I defining success?
Yeah.
So that's what I would, ask someone who's struggling with success. I would ask them like, hey, what does successful mean to you? How would you define success? Because yes, there is that cliche of, the GQ model that Josh was talking about. But for me, I've been able to rework it into living a meaningful life like that. So living a meaningful life and being successful, that is synonymous for me now. So that's where I focus. So if you ask me, do I feel like I'm successful? Sure. I feel like I'm successful. It's because I'm living a meaningful life.
Yeah, and that's a lot of what we do here. We call it work that matters because we have a real mission. We're not out there making widgets, and there's nothing wrong with widgets, but we get to really transform people's lives. And man, there is incredible meaning when you get to do something like that every day. Yeah. So I want to talk about getting clear on the why, because you're saying, let's define success. That really drills down into the why. We teach that at EntreLeadership. It's crucial for every leader. So what did you learn about yourself and your why during that season as you kind of made this shift?
For us, it started with the stuff as the minimalist. There was a why question, although we disguise it now as a how question because people are always asking, how do I do something? But it's much more about the why. And so the question we have is, how might your life be better with less? Another way to look at that is like, how might you be more successful with less? It doesn't mean less money necessarily, although when I left the corporate world, I took a 90% pay cut. I was making $200,000 a year in Dayton, Ohio. And that first year, in 2011, I made $23,000. Here's the weird thing. I was more financially secure that year than I had been the previous decade because I was more intentional with that money. I was more intentional with my time. I knew that every time I tried to give up $5 for a cup of coffee, I was parting with $5 of my freedom to a great extent. And we applied that to our business as well. Our first book tour, you and I were having lunch yesterday. We were talking about this. Here was literally our business model. We have a trunk full of books. We're going to 51 cities for our first book, which is called Minimalism. And in each city, we would sell enough books to hopefully have a hotel room that night and a meal. And if not, we would either sleep in Ryan's Toyota Corolla, which we call our tour bus, or maybe a kind reader would let us sleep on their couch or floor or something like that. Now, does that sound like success? To most authors, the answer to that is no. But we made some of the best memories, some of the best connections, and also really began to understand ourselves better as a result. By going through some of these really uncomfortable situations, we got really uncomfortable. That is the place from which we grew the most. And I think our business grew sort of as a beautiful accident. We started theminimalists.com in 2010, just as a blog, and enough people started asking, like, are you guys gonna, we were adding enough value. Are you guys going to write a book? And we wrote a book, and then, hey, you going to ever do come to our city and give a talk? Okay, I guess we'll do a book tour. And so we did that. We started publishing things on social media, a newsletter, and then eventually we made a documentary. We started a podcast. We didn't have grand plans for all of these things. There was not a 10-year vision or anything like that. The question was simple. How can I add value? And that ends up being the why behind whatever we do.
Yeah, a lot of meaning in that. Yeah. That's incredible. Well, you were talking about, selling books out of the trunk of your car, which, of course, reminds me of Dave Ramsey's story.
Okay.
Which is the scrappy business owner, he was going to video stores saying, hey, put my book out on the shelf. I'll give you a cut. that was his business model at the
Yeah.
time. And so, but I think there's something to the scrappiness and the sacrifice that creates meaning and makes the success really feel like it was worth it. Do you think there's a connection between that kind of grind and sacrifice and hustle that we see with, people getting out of debt? It means more when you had to sacrifice than when someone just handed you a blank check and said, "Hey, your debt's forgiven." Both beautiful things, but one really changes your character.
Ryan, it didn't feel to me at the time like we were sacrificing, though.
No. In fact, I was thinking we were so excited and passionate about what we were doing, like sleeping on the, hardwood floor or sleeping in the car or whatever we had to sacrifice. It was worth giving up for like the greater mission. I hate the saying that is like propagated so much in our culture, which is if you find work that you love, then you never, or if you do things you love, you'll never work another day in your life. And that's just not true. Like we work a lot. And going through that tour was working a lot. But, just because you're doing something you love doesn't mean that you don't have to work. So I think, we were able to accept that. And when you're doing something that you can't not do, you'll put anything ahead of.
You'll pay any price.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's always worth it.
Yeah.
That's awesome.